So in this video, I'm going to be going over the human immune system and how your body fights off foreign invaders. Now, we've talked about red blood cells, we've talked about white blood cells, and in the case of your immune system, keep in mind what your body is fighting. Your body is looking for things that aren't yours. And we've talked about how your body knows to look for this thing called a marker protein, and you're going to learn the name of the marker protein in this video. But every cell in your body has a protein that's unique to just you, and that's what we've called your marker protein. And so your immune system is simply going along looking for cells that belong to you. So if something is missing your marker protein, then that's how your immune system knows what it needs to fight off. So when we talk about your immune system, this is your body's defense against disease-causing organisms, malfunctioning cells, and foreign particles. So in this case, when we talk about disease-causing cells, these are going to be things called pathogens. These are things like bacteria. The way that bacteria make you sick is when they get into your tissue, they begin to feed. And it's not the feeding that kills you, but they produce waste products just like we do. And most of their waste products are toxic. So their waste products kill your cells. Viruses attach to your cells and get inside of your cells and tell your cells to become baby-making cells. And you're going to see your cells swell up and your cells explode. Pathogens of other types, like fungi actually secrete digestive enzymes. They secrete acids, which will kill your tissues. And different parasites, depending on the parasite, they're going to kill your tissues a different way. Okay. But malfunctioning cells are your own cells that aren't working right. And we've talked about these marker proteins. We've talked about antigens. And remember, antigens are proteins on the surface of a cell. And when we have antigens, every cell in your body has one unique antigen, which is called your MHC protein, or what we've always called your marker protein. And if you're a malfunctioning cell, you're mutated in some way. So a lot of times, the antigens on the surface of the cell won't be what they're supposed to be. And so your immune system can recognize, okay, this is a weird protein. I've never seen this protein before. So it's going to destroy the cell. And a lot of times, malfunctioning cells also make mutated marker proteins. And since it's not an exact match of your marker protein, your immune system knows to go after it. So when we talk about infections, you are infected all the time. But keep in mind, infection doesn't mean that you're sick. As we go through this, you've got two parts to your brain. You've got the subconscious part of your brain, and you've got the conscious part of the brain. When you have an infection, a bad guy is inside of you. It's, by definition, a colonization of a host organism by a parasitic species. And that is what we call a pathogen. A pathogen is something that can make you sick. It's a virus, a bacteria, a parasite, a fungus. And it gets inside of your body, it gets inside of living tissue, and it causes destruction of some type. You are infected all the time. You constantly have some bad guy inside of you. And we'll talk about that. But just because you're infected doesn't mean you're sick. When you're sick, by the time you actually get what you call getting sick, you've been infected for several days, up to a week before you actually start feeling the effects. Because the effects come from a buildup of different chemicals. So those bad guys have to have been in your body for a long time before the conscious part of your brain starts to pick up on these elevated levels of chemicals and makes you feel bad in order to get your attention. Now, so we're going to talk about what we call nonspecific immune response and specific immune response. And I'm going to use viruses as my main example. Okay. Bacteria get into your tissue, secrete toxins. Those toxins poison your cells die. In the case of viruses, viruses are very specific. They are looking for certain things. So I'm going to bring this down here. So I have my little page here. This guy is a virus. Okay? Viruses have proteins on their cells, or on their body, just like your cells have proteins. I always call proteins M&Ms because all M&Ms have a hard shell on the outside. Well, all viruses have a hard shell on the outside. It's called the capsid. And depending on the kind of virus, you will have different proteins on the surface of the virus. Remember, those proteins are called antigens. Well, when the virus gets inside of you, it has to stick to another cell. So depending on the antigens that the virus has, it's going to stick to different cells. So if you had a cell that had this type of protein on the outside, this will not stick to this. However, if you have a cell that has this kind of protein on it, this will stick to this. So that's how viruses know what to look for. So for example, the influenza virus will stick to your lung tissue. The hepatitis virus sticks to your liver tissues. HIV sticks to a special kind of white blood cell, which we're going to talk about later. But what viruses do is they enter your body and they basically inject their genetic material into your cells. Some viruses carry DNA. I call those are like your regular chocolate M&Ms. Some viruses carry RNA. There's like your peanut M&Ms. But viruses are not cells. They don't have a cell membrane. They don't have cytoplasm. They're just a shell with a string on the inside of it. So the virus will attach to your cell and inject that string, be it DNA or RNA, into your cell. And it tricks your cell into thinking that it's helpless. And your cells, being nice guys, say, oh yeah, I'll help you. I'll make some proteins for you. But then it hijacks all of your organelles. So now your cell isn't yours anymore. It's not doing the job it's supposed to have. It becomes a virus-making factory. So your cells become like assembly plants, and they start making all these virus parts. And so your cells will swell up with all these baby viruses, and then they explode. So this would be just a normal cell before infection, and this is what it looks like afterwards. So you can see there's a few, maybe those dark black spots there are a few viruses that have shown up. And now here's all the baby viruses, and the cell's going to keep swelling until they explode. And when they explode, the baby viruses go and land on other cells and start this process all over again. So when you have an infection, you have cells that are dying. And we talked about how cells secrete histamine. There's our 911 call. We're going to go over that again. But when you're infected, you have cells that are being killed. Well, 99% of the time, your body destroys the bad guy before you ever realize it's there. Your body will destroy the bad guys before the conscious part of the brain realizes it's there. If you're feeling sick, you've been infected for several days, which we're going to talk about. Now, with your immune system, we do have two divisions. Okay? The first one, which we're going to look at today, is called the nonspecific immune response. 99% of the time, this is going to kill anything that attacks you within a matter of days, or even a matter of hours, maybe even a matter of minutes. But with this one, the body does, it's stuff the body does every day regardless of what happens. It just knows it's not supposed to be there. This runs all the time. This never turns off. Your skin, as you're going to see, is part of this. Your skin's dead. You can't infect something that's dead, but you know that your skin secretes acids. Well, those acids are going to kill anything that lands on it. You don't have some acids that just kill bacteria, and you don't have some acids that just kill viruses. Okay? So that's what we mean by nonspecific. These guys are simply going to destroy things regardless of what it is. This runs all the time. And so this will take care of 99% of all of our problems. But every once in a while, a bad guy gets inside of us and starts causing damage. If that happens, the specific immune response has to turn on. This one runs all the time. This one has to be turned on. And so this is when your body has been fighting these bad guys for probably about a week. And it realizes, okay, everything I've done so far isn't working. I need to get more specific. So this is when your body's trying to figure out what it's fighting. Because if it's a virus, it needs to fight it one way. If it's a bacteria, it needs to fight it a different way. Is this something I've seen before? Is this something that's brand new? And so with the specific immune response, this is why you get sick maybe once or twice a year. Okay? Because the other 360 so many days of the year, this guy has killed it before you ever even realize it's there. So we're going to look at the nonspecific immune response in this video. Okay? And with the nonspecific immune response, this is where your MHC protein comes into play. Now, we've been talking about your marker protein all semester long. It actually has a name. It's called your MHC, for major histone compatibility protein. Histones are spools of DNA you have inside of your cells. And so nobody in the world has the same histones because nobody has the same DNA, not even identical twins because of mutations. So you're going to have, everybody has a different MHC protein. And again, this is what your immune system's looking for. Your white blood cells don't know what a bacteria is. They don't know the difference between mononucleosis virus. They don't know TB virus. They just know it doesn't have your marker protein on it. And so they're going to go around destroying things that are missing your marker protein. And with the nonspecific immune response, it doesn't care what it is. It's going to kill it, destroy it, no matter what. So this guy runs all the time. And it does go in a certain order. So I'm going to take you through it in order, because it does get to a point where you should have destroyed whatever's causing you the infection. And if you haven't destroyed what's causing the infection, and then other things are going to start to turn on. So I'm going to start off with the things that run all the time. And these are what we call your surface membrane barriers. You're going to hear me say SMBs. Your surface membrane barriers are just that. They are barriers. They're going to block things. They tend to be dead. You can't infect something that's dead. Your skin is dead. So if something lands on you, it can't infect it. Okay? Your skin secretes sweat. Sweat has acid in it. Sweat has salt in it. You know that salt will dry things out. The uric acid residue that's left on your skin. We talked about how sweat and urine are very similar. That's going to kill stuff. Okay? Every time you shed your skin, anything that's attached to your skin falls off. Your skin secretes oil. Stuff gets trapped in the oil. When you take a bath, you wash it off. So these are all barriers. And most of your skin, or hopefully all of your skin, is intact. So the only way something can get through your skin is if you have a cut, which we'll talk about. But this is your first line of defense, so it's going to stop about 90% of all of your pathogens. Okay, mucus. Okay, it's going to trap trash. It's dead. Okay. So with your skin, that's what your skin looks like. Okay. That's a little something crawling on your skin right there. Okay. But we've talked about how your skin is dead, and the outermost layer is called the epidermis. Well, you shed your skin all the time. So anything that lands on your skin is probably going to fall off. Okay. Your skin has oil. So stuff's going to get stuck in the oil. And when you take a bath, you wash the oil off, you're going to wash it off with it. Okay. You have acid on your skin. It's going to kill stuff. This is all nonspecific. Your skin, you don't have one part of your skin that just fights bacteria. You don't have one part of your skin that just fights viruses. Okay. So your skin is truly your first line of defense. And remember, you do shed between 40 to 50,000 skin cells a day. So the chances of something actually being able to burrow under all of your layers of skin before you shed it is very, very, very small. Okay. Now, any opening you have in your body does have mucus. Okay. Right. And so when we talk about an orifice, like your eyes, which are living material, we talked about how your eyes, you guys all know you have eye boogers. That's mucus. It's going to trap trash. Your ears have earwax to trap trash. Your nose has mucus to trap trash. Your saliva has mucus in it. Okay? Your anal opening has mucus in it. Lady, your vaginal orifices, mucus. The only orifice that doesn't is your urinary tract opening, called your urinary meatus or your urogenital opening, because it already has a high level of acid. Right? But you guys know that mucus's job is to trap trash. Okay? It's nonspecific. You don't have some mucus that just traps bacteria. You don't have some mucus that just traps viruses. Okay? Mucus is going to trap stuff. In your nose, you're going to breathe stuff in. It gets trapped by the mucus. You know it drips into your mouth and you swallow it. So your stomach acid is going to kill it. Okay? You have cilia. You have nose hair. You have eyebrows. You have eyelashes. There's hair in your pubic region. There's hair around your anal opening. That hair is there to trap stuff. So it can't crawl into that opening and infect living tissues. Okay? And again, that's what it talks about. Any opening you have is going to have a mucus lining or a cilia to help trap that trash. Okay. So 90% of the time, nothing ever actually gets into your body. Okay. So that's why we don't walk around sick all the time. Okay. These are going to take care of it. Something's going to land on you or something's going to get trapped. It never gets a chance to get to living tissue. Okay. Saliva, okay. When you were little, if you cut yourself, and some people still do it, when you get a finger cut, the first thing you do is you stick it in your mouth. Well, that's actually instinct because our saliva contains chemicals called lysozymes. And lysozymes have the ability to kill bacteria. The problem is most bacteria that our lysozymes would destroy have already disappeared. Okay. Remember, bacteria evolve just like we do. And so most bacteria out there today, our saliva has no effect on. You might have heard, an old wives' tale that if you cut yourself, you should let your dog lick the cut. And people are like really grossed out about that. Well, there's actually truth to that because the dog's chemicals are different than our chemicals, and the saliva in the dog's mouth can actually kill bacteria that might infect us. Then your stomach acid. Okay, we talked about how stuff is, if you think about it, we put a lot of stuff in our mouth. Okay? You can get a utensil, it's still got bacteria and viruses on it. You're constantly breathing stuff in. A lot of stuff goes in our mouth, okay? But we don't get sick that often because we swallow stuff and it goes down into our stomach. And you guys know that our stomach is full of acid, and those acids going to help kill stuff. Right? Well, these are all what we call nonspecific immune responses. They don't care. The stomach doesn't even realize it's destroying a bad guy. It doesn't know the difference between a bad guy and food. It's just an acid. It's going to break it down. So 90% of the time, all of this will take care of whatever it is. But at the other hand, almost every day you have a small cut on you somewhere, particularly in the wintertime. In the wintertime, you guys know the air is really dry. That's why our skin chaps. Okay? That's why we get ashy. Our skin gets really, really dry when it's cold. Well, your respiratory system can get really, really dry when it's cold. And this is why you tend to get sick more often in colder weather, not because it's cold outside, but because it's dry. And when your tissues get dry, they crack. And when they crack, you expose living tissue. So a lot of times when it's cold outside, you might have a little sore in your nose somewhere, or you might have chapped lips, or you might have chapped fingers. So you've got a little itsy bitsy cut on you. So something can get into your body. It can bypass your surface membrane barriers. So if that happens, these other guys come in. So something manages to make it past your SMBs, your surface membrane barriers. This next step starts. Now, just so you know, this guy runs 24 hours a day. You always have something inside of you. There is a cut on your body somewhere all the time. So these guys are always working. But between these and your membrane barriers, you don't get sick. So if something manages to make it past, these two guys are going to get to work. They're both nonspecific. They're in living tissue. They are living tissue. They're just looking for your marker proteins. The first one is what we call your cellular defenses, or your phagocytes. Now, I mentioned that white blood cells were phagocytes when we talked about white blood cells. Phage means to eat. So remember, phagocytes eat things. Okay? And they're basically going to look for things that don't have your marker protein. And they look like little amoebas. Okay? So here's a little white blood cell. There's your little bacteria. And just like an amoeba, it crawls and it will form this little vesicle and it will secrete digestive enzymes. And those digestive enzymes will destroy the bad guy. Okay? It doesn't care what it's eating. It might eat a virus 1 second and 2 minutes later it's eating a bacteria. It just knows it's not supposed to be there. It knows it doesn't have your marker protein on it, so it's going to destroy it. And this is how your immune system works 90% of the time. You constantly have something that manages to get into living tissue. Well, you constantly have phagocytes crawling all over your organs, and they're going to eat these bad guys. Now, they do have to be careful, though, because it is possible that this little bacteria can infect that cell. So phagocytes do sacrifice themselves every time they attack something, but they tend to be the winners. So they will use these little pseudopods, they'll crawl around and they'll trap this little bad guy and they'll secrete digestive enzymes to break it down. The other cells are called natural killer cells. They're also white blood cells, but they're not phagocytes. Phagocytes surround the bad guy, create a vesicle, incorporate the bad guy, and break it down like it's inside of its stomach. These guys don't want to touch the bad guy at all. What they're going to do is they are going to, like having a water gun, shoot a chemical at the bad guy. And hopefully that chemical starts to dissolve a hole into the bad guy. And I keep saying bad guy because I can't say cell membrane. Because viruses don't have a cell membrane. They have a shell. A lot of bacteria have a cell wall around their cell membrane. But what these killer cells will do is they're going to shoot this chemical. Sorry, I'm shifting. They're going to shoot this chemical at the cell in order to eat holes in the cell, and then water rushes in. And when the water rushes in, the cells swell up and they explode. So most of the time, every second of every day, your surface membrane barriers and these cells are working. So 99% of the time, these will kill anything that gets in your body before it has a chance to cause a serious infection. If something in you not supposed to be there, that's an infection. Okay? But one or two of them is not going to be a big deal. When you get a lot of them in there and they're killing your cells or they're causing damage to your cells, that's a major infection. And 99% of the time, anything that gets in you will be destroyed at this point before it ever has a chance to cause a major infection. But let's just say for some reason, okay, you've got a lot of bad guys inside of you. And bless their hearts, these little phagocytes are eating as much as they can. These guys are shooting as much of the bad guys that they can. And the bad guys just aren't going away. At this point in time, you have cells that are truly being damaged. And remember, when cells get damaged, they secrete histamine. And histamine's the 911 call that the cells use to say, hey, I'm damaged, I need some help. So you always have cells that are being damaged. So you always have histamine showing up in your bloodstream. So your brain has learned, oh yeah, it's going to ignore a certain level of histamine. But at this point in time, you should have an elevated amount of histamine in your bloodstream. That's going to start getting your brain's attention. So at this point in time, the conscious part of your brain is going to start to let you know something's going on. So this is like, you probably all be like, oh man, I hope I'm not getting sick. You don't feel bad, but you don't feel right either. That's because you have elevated levels of histamine and your brain's starting to pick up on that. Now you might wake up the next morning and you feel perfectly fine. Your body was able to take care of it, no problem. But you might wake up the next morning and you're sick. So let's say we wake up the next morning and we're sick. So at this point, the above steps have not worked. And what I mean by that is, bless their hearts, they've tried really hard. Okay? However, there's so much of the bad guy that your cells are now getting infected. So you have this elevated histamine in your bloodstream. So the conscious part of your brain is going to start saying, okay, what can I do to help? So at this point in time, you're still going to be a nonspecific, but the conscious part of your brain is telling the specific immune response, get ready. You don't have to turn on yet, but I might need you. So at this point in time, somewhere in your body, you have inflammation. Now, we can only see inflammation when it happens to our skin. But anytime you have cells that are damaged, you have an inflammatory response. This happens when you have the flu. It happens in your lungs. If you have hepatitis, this happens in your liver. But this happens wherever you have an infection because these are the cells that are secreting histamine. Again, your 911 call. Well, when you have elevated levels of histamine, histamine is a vasodilator. It causes your blood vessels to get bigger. Well, when your blood vessels get bigger, a bunch of blood goes to that area, so that area is going to get more red. We can see it when it happens on the skin, but this happens anywhere you have an infection. So if you had like a major flu and I were to cut you open, that area that's concentrated with the flu virus would be a bright red compared to everything else. Well, because I'm sending all the blood to that area is going to get really red. Well, blood is hot as well. So that area is going to be hot. That's why if you've ever had like a really bad infected cut, if you put your hand on it, it was warm. Because remember, heat causes proteins to denature. So maybe the heat can kill some of those bad guys. Also, when your histamine levels jump, that triggers your pain nerves. Remember, we talked about thresholds. Well, your pain nerves have a threshold, so it's going to take so much histamine to turn those on. And so by now, things are going to start to hurt, and it's going to swell. If you have a lot more fluid, a lot more white blood cells, that area is going to start to swell. So when you're sick, this is happening somewhere in your body. We just don't see it happening. Okay? We do see it happening when it's happening on our skin. Also at this point in time, you're probably starting to get a fever. Okay. Now, fevers happen for a reason. As humans, we're very spoiled. We don't want to feel bad. So as soon as we think we have a fever, we're going to take some Tylenol. Well, that's actually one of the worst things you can do. A fever is your body's way of heating up to kill the bad guys. Heat kills things. That's why we sanitize things. That's why we wash our dishes in hot water. Okay? Nature, you have a fever for a reason. Okay? Most of us, our normal body temperature is 98.6 degrees. Well, we get a fever of 99.9, we freak out and we take Tylenol. No, go to sleep. The best thing for you to do when you have a fever is go to sleep. Stay home from school. Go to sleep. Now, high fevers can be detrimental. If you have a fever of 103, it's so hot, your own cells start to die. That's why people hallucinate with high fevers. Okay? But when you have a mild fever, just take a nap. Because if you take Tylenol, you're going to bump your body temperature down. You've defeated the whole purpose. You're going to stay sick longer. So as long as you have a mild fever, go to sleep. Let your body do its thing. Right? You only need to take Tylenol when you have a high fever because the Tylenol will bump it down, but you still have a fever. And that will still give your body a chance to take care of what needs to be taken care of. So at this point in time, the second line of defense should start to be turning on. Okay? This guy, remember, only turns on when we need it. And so in all honesty, if you think about it, this really only turns on about 2 or 3 times a year. Most of us are only sick maybe twice a year. Okay? Some of us might go a whole year without getting sick. Okay? But at this point in time, the second line of defense is starting to turn on. And we talked about this thing called the thymus gland. As a child, you want your kids to be as sick as possible. Because remember, as a child, your thymus gland works. And your thymus gland lets you make all these different kinds of weapons. And so every time a child gets sick, the thymus gland goes, oh, let me make a new weapon. So let me take you back to my page here. So let's say you're a child and you have never seen this virus before. Your thymus gland can make weapons to shoot at it. That's what antibodies are. And once you've made that weapon, you keep the blueprints. So if you ever need that weapon again, you can make it again. That's why kids get sick a lot, because they haven't made their weapons yet. But once they make the weapon, as an adult, that's why you don't get sick as often. Okay? Children get sick all the time, but they don't stay sick for very long. Because they get sick, they figure out what weapon to make, and they make the weapon. And then what we'll do is we'll shoot the weapons at the bad guys. And those weapons block the bad guys, and now the bad guys can't stick to your cells, they can't infect your cells. Well, the sicker your kid is, the more weapons they'll have as an adult. So the less likely you are to get sick as an adult. So that's why kids get sick a lot, but they don't stay sick for very long, because they can make their weapons. Adults, we don't have a thymus gland anymore. So we can't make new weapons. So we have to hope what we have works. When you get sick, that means you've never seen that disease before. So as an adult, we don't have a weapon for it. That's why adults stay sick longer, because we have to take weapons that we have and try to make them work. So if this virus here attacked us as an adult, and we didn't have this weapon, but maybe we had this weapon, we would try to make this fit here. And it takes a little bit longer to do. Right? So as a child, we can make these things called complements. Right? Complements are the weapons we made as kids. They're our blueprints. They're inactive proteins that are always in our blood. And we have one complement about, theoretically, for every disease we've ever had. And these are just loose weapons. They're antibodies. Loose antibodies floating around your bloodstream. So if you get sick, your body will go to the armory, your blood, and find your different complements and start shooting it at the bad guy. This is how your body tries to figure out what it's attacking you. Okay? So if this guy here attacks us, and I shoot this complement at it and it sticks, my body goes, oh, I've seen this before. I know what it is. I know how to destroy it. But let's say this is your virus, and you don't have a weapon to stop that virus. That means you've never had that virus before, and your body's got to figure out what to do with it. Right. And so that is where we're going to start our lesson tomorrow.